Welcome to
Yeah,
Gooners.
I gotcha.
All right, we're recording now. Welcome
Okay,
to
cool.
Gooners of the USA, where a few things are out of the ordinary today. First of all, I'm rolling solo without my podcast slash life partner, Andy, who, quote unquote, had to work today. Second, despite playing a game yesterday and winning against Vorska, we're not going to focus on that game till after the weekend, after Everton, and when we do our normal weekly pod. And third, it's audio only today, so you will not see my enormous yet handsome face. But it's an audio chat with a man. Gab, brace yourself for this, okay? The man whose resume, or CV if you prefer, makes mine look like a lifelong French fry cook at McDonald's. A man who's watched all the world's greats play in person from a very young age. Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Pirlo, Feinberg. I mean, all the greats. And a man who shares my joy in finally seeing our favorite U.S. sports teams win a championship this year after a lifetime of waiting. Congratulations on the Eagles. And you are an Eagles fan, are you not?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
And it is true. I can confirm. But as you don't know, Mike and I went to school together, and we played football together. And yes, I got to see Mike Feinberg play up close and personal.
Yep, and I think the last time you joined us was way back in the first season. This is our third. I don't know who's still listening to us, but more people than were listening to us then. Episode 1.34, and your first article for ESPN was. By the way, it's Gab Marcotti, everybody. I didn't finish the intro, but welcome back to the podcast.
Great to be back.
So your first article for ESPN, I hear, is a scouting report on a young me playing wildebeest style football on the pavement of the high school we attended in London, and since then it's kind of all been downhill with the subjects that you've had to cover. That was about 11 stone ago, I think. I'm not going to go into how many years ago, but it was definitely 11 stone ago in my case.
The remarkable thing, and people who know you now may not believe this, is you were very, very quick. You were really, really fast. In fact, I think a big part of the strategy would be like you sort of running in behind Thierry Henry style. You know, the difference being that I think more than once your finish would go out for a throw-in. But other than that,
and there was no offsides on the playground, I don't think. So
you had real wheels, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I purportedly got Gab on to talk about Ivan Gazidis, but really it was just to spend 30 minutes talking about my football career. No, but really, when I saw the news about Gazidis, the first rumors a couple months ago, and then the news kind of breaking in large part due to some very fine writing on your part, I immediately thought of you because while you're not an Arsenal supporter, and I forgive you for that, you are definitely in tune to the business of football. You're extremely well versed in the Italian game and Milan specifically, and you have a pretty good sense of how the Kroenkes, run and operate. So the big question I want to get out of the way first is: should I be saying Milan or Milan? which is more appropriate for an American to be saying without sounding like a poser?
I think both are acceptable. You can even call them AC Milan if you like.
AC Milan?
No, not AC Milan. The AC only applies. Yeah, it only applies in English. You can call them AC Milan. That's fine. Okay. What I think is incredibly posy and wanky is if you call the other team from Milan Internazionale. That's just weird to me. Yeah. It just sounds wrong. It's just Inter.
I don't call them anything because
there you go.
Because I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a poser. I'm actually a huge poser. All right, so a lot's happened with my beloved Arsenal since the two of us last spoke. We have Arsene Wenger sitting on a beach, presumably living out his fantasy of sipping wine with Sir Alex, and I think enjoying a break from football more than he actually realized he would. That's just my theory. We've got Unai Emery in coaching the team, and in my opinion, off to a very suitable start. Raul Sanllehi in from Barcelona as the director of football. Sven Mislintat in from Dortmund as the chief scout. Huss Fahmy taking over for the deplorable Dick Law as the contract negotiator. So there's a whole new management team and structure that ultimately was the group of men that gave Arsene Wenger the clear signal that we were moving on without him. But what about the man who's credited towards the transition, or coup, if you want to refer to it that way? What about Ivan Gazidis, the CEO of Arsenal? And I want to ask you from an Arsenal perspective first, and then we do want to hear a little bit about it from, from the Milan point of view.
Well,
What did Gazidis do, first of all, other than his obvious role in the overhaul the last 12 to 18 months? What is his job description? What's walking out the door right now?
well, this is the odd thing, right? And I mean, I wrote this in my piece at ESPN. So, Gazidis had been there since, I believe he officially took over January 2009. And, obviously Arsenal fans very well versed in the Wenger situation and the ups and downs of that relationship. But, you dial it back sort of 9, 10 months and it becomes clear that Gazidis wins that, and I say use wins in air quotes, wins that struggle, right? He and Kroenke agree that, it's time for change. So a whole bunch of people end up exiting. Your buddy Dick Law, as you mentioned there, and Steve Rowley and so on. And all these other guys come in, the guys you mentioned, Raul Sanllehi, Mislintat, and then eventually, obviously, Unai Emery as well. And so you figure at that point, viewed from the outside, your attitude is like, all right, Ivan won. Ivan got what he wanted. Wenger's gone, and he's got a whole team of specialists handpicked by him, who have come in to replace him. And I more than one person who came in, made it quite clear that they came in because of Ivan, because they wanted to work with Ivan, because they were excited about what was going in, because they liked Ivan and they had a lot of respect for him. And then on top of that, also in the background, let's not forget, Kroenke buys out Usmanov's stake, and Usmanov may have been, obviously he had no control of the club, but, he still owned a big chunk of it and, could occasionally make pronouncements as a shareholder, whereas, if he makes pronouncements now, he just does it as some random guy from one of the stands. So, that was the incredible thing. You got everything you wanted. You're the second highest paid executive in the Premier League. And then all of a sudden it gets turned on its head and he decides he wants to talk to Milan and consider, the offer from their new owners.
Did he send out signals, you think, saying, I'm available for a new challenge, or was it just?
No,
I know he's got connections to some of the people who have recently taken over at Milan, but I don't know if he was necessarily just sideswiped with an intriguing offer, or if he was really looking to move on since he had kind of reached the mountaintop, I guess, at Arsenal.
What, reached the mountaintop of what?
Of toppling the regime that he wanted to topple, and from I don't mean the mountaintop on the pitch.
Okay. It's funny because if you read the press release and it lists all of Arsenal's achievement under his time, including all the ones on the pitch. I know it's a team effort, and the tea lady is just as important as the as the manager, the center forward, but it just kind of read funny, when you go through it.
Yeah. I agree.
So my understanding, and to write this story, I had the privilege. I was able to speak to a lot of people familiar with the story, all in with different. Some of them with different agendas. Some of them were straight. One thing that you probably, or two things you probably read a lot to help explain why he moved. Now, for those who don't know, obviously, Milan was sold. Milan's longtime owner sold them about a year and a little bit ago to this Chinese guy named Li Yonghong, who claimed to be super rich and have all this money in China, except he couldn't get it out of China, and so therefore he borrowed the money from this private equity stroke hedge fund group called Elliott Management, run by a guy named Paul Singer and his son Gordon, who's based here in London. These guys lent him money, something like 400 million. Li Yonghong turned out to be a slight bit of a snake oil salesman, he wasn't able to repay them, and they defaulted on the loan. So Elliott found that they had the club for about $400 million, which is a lot less than what Milan are worth.
Yeah.
Elliott could have said, "Well, we're not really in the business of running football clubs. We've never run one before." They could have just basically flipped it and sold it. Probably they could sell it right now for, I don't know, 700 million easy, and make a nice tidy profit. But they think, you know what, if we run Milan properly for 3 to 5 years, we do a good job, then it's going to be worth a lot more than that, and we can make a lot more money. And so that's when they turned to Ivan. Now, they turned to Ivan, not because they were so impressed with those fourth-place trophies. They turned to Ivan in part.
Third-place trophies a couple of years.
Well, yeah, that to be fair. No, but because there was a long-standing relationship between that guy Gordon Singer, who I mentioned, who's based here in London and has been for a long time, and Ivan, which I think goes back to when before Ivan even got involved in football, even pre-MLS, when he was he was a lawyer. According to some people, they actually get together and play five-a-side football regularly. I'm always kind of skeptical when those stories are a little too good to be true. But, there is a genuine friendship between grown men, which is which is very real. So that was part of the idea, right? So you got these two guys, they're two buddies. It's like a road movie. Let's go and run this club ourselves and blah, blah, blah. The other thing that you hear is that it's about money. And I've heard some reports that, Ivan's going to make millions and millions. Other people who I trust more, and who I think really have their finger on the pulse of this, have said, no, actually, he's not getting a huge raise. As I mentioned, he was the second highest paid.
He was getting part of the team, though. They've talked about equity in the team, which, again, I would have no clue, but that's just what's being bandied about.
That's, yeah, I mean, what I was told was that he could get bonuses, or that he will get bonuses, possibly equity in the team, and that's going to be based on the sale price if they go and sell the club. I mean, simply giving him equity in the team, doesn't really make that much sense because, unless it's a tiny amount. Exactly. So, but, again, in our scenario, I'm sure Elliott probably have a bunch of nerds in a room whose job it is to tell us exactly how much Milan is worth right now. So they probably look at it and say, all right, look, we think it's worth 600 million. Ivan, you come on board. If in 2 years' time it's worth, say, 800 million, then of that 200 million, difference in valuation, you'll get X percent. And then it would be a big payoff. All of this is possible, and would make sense. Other people have told me Ivan's not really that motivated by money. All his kids are grown up. They're all, in fact, one of them graduated from the same school we went to.
So he must be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Which Ivan was a trustee of that school actually as well. But anyway, they've all moved on.
The school that cranked out Steve-O, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And also Andrew Luck. So
yeah. Oh, that's true. All right,
they balance out.
Hit or miss.
But yeah. So other people have told me, look, he's not really that motivated by money. He's made a few bob, but he likes the new challenge.
Yeah, and that brings up. I just want to interject with a question because it's right on that topic from Schwinn, who's a listener and fellow podcaster. In his opinion, Ivan had nothing to gain from staying at this point. He says all future successes will be attributed to the Emery, Raul, Sven triad, and all future failures would be attributable to him. So it's kind of like selling high, and Milan are offering, in his words, equity and huge bonuses because he's obviously on the inside there. But I mean, do you think that is it more about the departure in the sense that maybe he's kind of rifted with the Kroenkes and the board over the transition, over the Arteta situation, which is what Kroenke wants to know. I mean, what Swin wants to know. Or is it more about preferring the destination? Was he jumping off a ship, or is he just jumping onto a new one?
So my understanding is that, well, he certainly has rifted with the Kroenkes now, because remember, it's 2 months, right? It's been 2 months since the story opened and then came to its conclusion, and then obviously his resignation doesn't take effect for a while longer, and then 2 months in which I think really did affect Arsenal. It affected Arsenal in the transfer market. It affected that whole uncertainty, and it could affect them further because, like I said, several of these people who come on board were recruited by Ivan and thought they were going to be working with Ivan. It's like you join a new company, and then all of a sudden your boss who said, "Hey, we're going to do great things together," all of a sudden he's gone. I think I'd like to believe that Kroenke, or at least Stan Kroenke, was quite disappointed by the way this played out. And while now they're all going to be all smiley and happy and mutual decision, blah blah blah, I think he felt that it could have been handled better.
I think everything at Arsenal since the sacking of George Graham has been a mutual decision. None of it's been a mutual decision, but it's always a mutual decision. Everyone has to come out of it smelling like a rose.
Yeah, like the mutual decision that Wenger left, like that one.
Exactly.
And again, I'm also told that while Stan Kroenke's often described as sort of this heartless guy with a mustache, the fact of the matter is he was very fond of Wenger, and fond of Wenger personally. They're the same age. I mean, again, I know very little about Stan Kroenke beyond what I read and what people tell me. I don't see what the two could possibly have in common, but there was a certain allegiance there, which may explain why Wenger stuck around this long. And I don't think it was easy for Stan to remove Wenger in the way he did, which, as you know, is not a decision Wenger took well at all. And Wenger now is obviously even more annoyed that, Gazidis is gone too. So,
unless he sees it as an opportunity to regain his spot, not necessarily as a coach, but as a decision maker.
Well, that's the other odd thing, right? With Arsenal, because going forward now, it leaves you with, again, Raul Sanllehi is basically in charge of the football side, and
who's Vinay? I was going to ask you who is he and what does he do?
So he's a commercial guy. He used to work for London 2012. He was also recruited by Ivan, but I think he's been there like 6-7 years. Supposedly a bright guy. Supposedly not somebody who's going to pull a Woodward and then all of a sudden be like, I come from the commercial side, but let me be the big boss. I'm told he doesn't have ambitions to be chief executive, that he's happy to basically run everything that's not football. But you still have a two-headed monster at the top, which means at some point you'll need a tiebreaker. And some people have suggested that Josh Kroenke might have an interest in being more actively involved. I think they're going to give it a go in the short term. Longer term, I would imagine they might need to name a proper chief executive. Whether it's Josh Kroenke one day or whether it's somebody else, I don't know.
I just kind of assumed that's exactly what they were doing, is naming Josh Kroenke in that position. Maybe not formally, but just kind of that it was assumed that Kroenke would have a bigger role in the areas that, in maybe the non-football areas that Gazidis had always been handling for Arsenal.
Yeah, well, this is the other thing. Like when you're chief executive, it's fine for, there's a whole aspect of, that doesn't have to do with player recruitment and the playing staff, but it is football related in terms of how you relate to other clubs, how you relate to the leagues and so on. It remains to be seen. Is that something that Raul's going to do or whatnot? And that is something that Gazidis did, and that Gazidis did really, really well. I mean, Gazidis has a ton of cred and a ton of respect around Europe at different clubs. But I think in that sense, he was a real asset in sort of representing Arsenal elsewhere. And I think that is something that matters. Raul, I think, is somebody who can grow into that role, but again, he's only been here, I think, physically, and we might have been named earlier, but I think he's only physically been in London since March. So I think that might take a little more time.
Yeah, and Arsenal supporters, as we always are, split. We're massively fractured. I mean, we're a little bit not Maslow's hierarchy of needs at the top of that. I would say Arsenal supporters are, but so many are just so sick of the Kroenke name and the influence that they don't care if it's Stan or Josh or Rufus Kroenke, the dog, or Humber Kroenke, the nephew. I mean, they just want everybody named Kroenke out. And by the same token, I've heard a lot of people, not just American, not just English, not just people who go to games or don't go to games, but a lot of people very, very involved with Arsenal who are excited by the prospect of Josh maybe having a little bit more influence on the club than and using it and exerting it than Stan, who kind of was absentee to a fault. And they look at his involvement. I mean, everyone's talking about the Rams now. The Rams are good now. The NFL is different than world football. It's just different in so many ways. But there's some excitement about Josh. So I mean, is it possible that he could be, in fact, beneficial in a way and possibly exceed what Ivan was able to do with the club over the last, reaching the peaks, as I say, over the last 9 years?
I mean, it's entirely possible. Again, I've never spoken to Josh Kroenke directly, so all I know about him is he's a guy who played basketball in college and who owns, I think, a couple dogs, and I think he had an apartment in downtown Denver or near the Pepsi Center, and had an Instagram feed for his dogs or whatever. I mean,
he's sounding like Denver Alexis Sanchez right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slightly
which is not turning me on to him anymore. Actually, I have to say.
I mean, it's his dad's company, right? So I think if there's one thing we know about Stan Kroenke is, he's a smart businessman who married very smart businessmen. I mean, if you want to talk about sort of genes, Josh Kroenke between, sure,
Walmart
his dad on one side, but then you bring in his mom and grandpa, on the other side, on the Walton side, and you figure, this guy's absolutely loaded, right? I mean, he's like, he's like he's kind of like, wasn't like Steffi Graf and Andre Agassi, like their kids, like.
Yeah, they're the tennis version of what of Josh Kroenke is to money. And on a scale from 0 to 100, what is the percentage chance that Josh Kroenke's ever wiped himself? There's just zero chance. These are the things that keep me up at night, Gab.
I just been thinking about Josh Kroenke in the toilet. But look, I mean, but I think by the same token, I don't think he would get this role unless Stan thought he was ready. I don't think Stan's like, oh, look, here's a plaything, go play with that, Stan Kroenke owns, I think, 5 or 6 sports franchises. If he said, hey, Josh, go have fun with something, he'd probably buy him like a minor league lacrosse team or something to go play with.
No, I mean,
so I don't think it's that. So I think if he's going to take on that role, it's going to be with pretty defined responsibilities, and because Stan Kroenke believes that Josh is ready, and then I think that's pretty key. I would also imagine that in some way Josh Kroenke was a part of the hiring of Raul Sanllehi, and maybe even the hiring of Vinay, or at least the promotion of Vinay, because I think effectively he has been promoted. So, he is somebody who is already on the inside.
So just a couple more minutes. I know your time is tight. Just wanted to ask you a couple questions kind of from the Milan angle, and I'm just going to go for every possible pronunciation throughout the podcast. I'm hitting them all. With Gazidis at Milan, does he poach? Does he poach the team he brought in? Does he poach Ramsey? Do we have to be worried about that in the coming year or two?
Yeah, I saw the Ramsey story. I think you can blame Ivan for a lot of things. I know some people went so far as to blame him for Ramsey's contract. I don't really buy it. I don't buy the fact that, because Ivan was at Arsenal with Aaron Ramsey, so Milan are going to try to sign Ramsey. I mean, look, Ivan's got,
Look,
Ivan
if
has a
if
job.
they want him and he wants to go, then he can go. But I mean,
Yeah, right. No, but I think Milan signed. The interesting thing is, and this is one of the reasons why you know, I think Ivan's taking a really big risk in moving to Milan. Milan are still under financial fair play restriction. They can sign a what's called, and I won't get into it because it'll be boring to a lot of people. Because thanks to Kroenke, some of those things Arsenal fans will never have to worry about. But they can sign a financial fair play voluntary agreement, which allows them to spend a little more in breach in the short term if there's a long-term business plan. But they're going to be so far in the hole. I mean, last summer they were the third biggest spending team in Europe. I mean, last summer is in the summer 2017. So the reality is they can't spend their way out of it. He's going to have to go and grow revenue, and that's what he's going to be judged on. And again, I think that's going to be tough because they don't own the Sun Siro. Their crowds were already pretty good to begin with, like 52K or something. You can maybe push that up a little bit, but there's only so much you can do. It's not like you can sell naming rights or luxury boxes or whatever. He can't grow he can't grow the TV deal because they just signed a new one. And in fact, that was before Cristiano Ronaldo came in. All he can really do in the short to medium term is try to grow sponsorship income, and presumably he'll go and do that. And I think he did a pretty good job of that by all accounts at Arsenal.
and I think yeah, I mean that is the perfect, I think, segue to a question that'll allow you to expand on that from Tom Canton, who does the Gooner Talk TV. He understands the problems with Milan from his interpretation came from what happened with recruitment systems, performances on the pitch, and why have they now gone down the route to employ someone whose strengths really are more about commercial agreements? And I think you've just explained why.
Yeah,
That's really their only path to regaining their stature.
I would strongly dispute too that Milan's problems were recruitment and so on.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that. He's not going to like that at all.
Well, no. Well, no. I mean, I thought the recruitment last year, yeah, they made some mistakes, but I think the general principles were good, and they spent money they didn't have. I mean, that was fundamentally the problem. I mean, the real problem was Milan's losses before the Chinese guy took over, which he made things worse. But they had problems that were there. I mean, Milan's revenues today aren't really that much higher than they were a decade ago. And that's despite the fact that the Serie A contract, the TV deal's gone up. So there are issues there, and also on the recruitment side and whatever, Milan already made Elliott after they took over. They brought back Paolo Maldini, club legend, as a director of football development, and they brought in Leonardo, former Milan coach, former Paris Saint-Germain director of football, in a director of football had a recruitment role. So they really filled those roles. So Ivan's not really going to have anything to do with it. I mean, as I understand it, Ivan is there to go and to go and grow the commercial revenue.
To extract more money out of Emirates Airline for their shirt deal?
Presumably, yes. But yeah.
He's got those relationships.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be very involved in the in the football side at all.
Well, then, good for Milan in that sense. We're going to wrap up. I wanted to thank some people for some questions I didn't have time to. / they were kind of answered in the earlier discussions. Thank you, Rob Ford, and thank you, Tom. I'll see you in about 4 hours, and Alfredo as well. We kind of just were questioning like what does Milan see in Ivan Gazidis specifically.
I think you guys say, if I can just jump in, maybe answer this.
Please.
It's not so much what Milan sees. You have to look at it in terms of you got to look at it through the lens of Elliott, right? This hedge fund, this pretty aggressive hedge fund with a lot of people really don't like them. There's if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure most people might not be. There's a great Forbes article about Elliott and some of the controversy surrounding them. Forbes, or sorry, maybe it was Fortune magazine. Anyway, Google them if you're interested in this sort of financial stuff. But these are people who looked at this, and when nobody would lend Lee Young Hong the money to go and take over the club because they saw him for what he turned out to be, basically a snake oil salesman, they said, you know what? Let's go and give this guy, 303 million euros, I think was the initial loan. Because worst comes to worst, and this guy doesn't pay us back, we take over the club, and the brand and the players alone are worth more than what we would lose out if he defaults. So they made a purely business decision. And having done that and knowing very little about running a football club, they said, well, who do we trust? And these are people who operate, they don't want to be ripped off. They operate based on people that they trust. And, the guy who runs their London office, Gordon Singer, has been good buddy of Ivan for 20 years. And he, even if you hate Ivan, and you think he's a fool, you got to say, yeah, that guy's been involved in football for a very long time.
Yeah, I trust him. I can work with him.
Exactly. He's going to have skin in the game, right? Which is another thing. He's leaving a job at Arsenal where, like I said, based on, David Kahn in The Guardian publishes, the income of chief executives every year, right? Ivan made more money, marginally more, but he made more money than Ed Woodward. And again, you can think Ed Woodward's a fool too, but Manchester United are freaking cash cow, and a lot of it is down to Woodward.
Oh, they may waste money on players, but they have the money to waste. That's the point.
Oh my God! Even when they're terrible, yeah. It's like they're minting it, and that's down to Woodward. And it's not just Woodward; it's the sales guys around him. But they're all people who were hired by Woodward and then been pushed by Woodward. So look, this is how highly regarded. Ivan's walking away from that to go and basically get involved in a little bit of a gamble with Milan. So, they looked at this and they said, we trust him. So I think that's what, to answer the question, that's what they see in Ivan, somebody who's willing to go and take a risk with him and who's not going to screw them over.
Well, if anything else, I'm interested in following the tables in Serie A over the next couple of years because I noticed it's early on. Milan's been mid-table. I think 6th or 7th last season at the end of the day. 14th right now early on, which is really no measure of the team, but it's a gamble. They're a world football power who's hit a rough patch and trying to dig out of it, and will Gazidis and his impact and the decisions that are made underneath him help them kind of vault back above teams like Romeo. That's the combination of Roma and Lazio is Romeo, Napoli and the like. It's a fascinating thing to do.
It's a distressed asset, right? It's a huge brand. These guys, Elliot, a big part of what they've done in other industries is they've loaned money to distressed assets in countries and whatnot, and they've gotten involved. They've been activist shareholders, and in some cases,
they could end up looking like heroes at the end of the day.
Yeah, in the past, what they've basically done, which some of it is good news if you're a Milan fan, some of it is bad news, is they've either broken up companies and sold them for parts and asset stripped, their critics would say, or they've run them better and turned them around and sold them for a profit. That's kind of been their MO. Now, if they were going to asset strip at Milan, and they could do this, they could just go in and say, all right, screw this. We don't want this. Let's just go and sell everybody and go and dump everything and just get our money back out and go away. But they could have done that. They chose not to do that.
They'll wake up with a dead horse's head in their bed. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, let's go and throw out ethnic stereotypes. Why don't we?
Oh, I just finally watched The Godfather for the first time last month, so it's still fresh in my mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah, those guys are from the south of Italy. I wake up different kettle of fish.
I wake up with bagels all over my bed. It's okay.
There you go.
Well, Gab, I know you're a busy man these days, as always. I appreciate you take time to chat with me, even though I am a Gooner. We have history, and that prevails. I appreciate it. Where can we find you these days? I know from what I know of, we got the Game podcast. We've got your ESPN contributions around the world. You've got
Yeah,
the
I mean,
49 newspapers you write for. I mean,
no.
where can we find
It's
you?
mostly it's the Times. I write a column for them. Obviously, the game podcast twice a week, and mostly it's ESPN. You can read my column on the site. Our show. Did you subscribe to? Are you an ESPN Plus customer, Feinberg?
Absolutely, $4.99 a month, and
There
it's
you
well.
go.
And I would pay. I don't tell them this, but I offered to pay $7.99 a month for more Marcotti.
There you go. Yes,
For the
I wanted
Marcotti
you to know.
package. I want
No, but I
Marcotti
think our
that follows you around the part of London. I almost said the part of London where you live. Gets
it's
a whole, what is it? Immersion experience. The girlfriend experience.
easy there. Our PR department, I think today just released that we've in 5 months we got more than 1 million subscribers. There's a lot of soccer content on there. If you want to watch, if you want to revel in Ivan and more Ivan as an Arsenal fan, which maybe we don't, but we do have the rights to Serie A, so you can catch that on ESPN Plus as well. So so stay tuned. I appreciate the follow and the interest.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Gab. It's always good to reconnect with you. I hope we'll have a chance to grab another pint when I'm in London next month. And as always, keep up the great work that you do. Appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Take care.
All right, come on, you Gooners.